The movie opens up with information about a deadly virus, released in 1996, which wiped out almost all of humanity, forcing survivors to live underground. A group known as the Army of the 12 Monkeys is believed to have released the virus. A boy at the airport sees a man getting shot, and then a woman coming to his help. However, it is just a dream of our protagonist James Cole, a prisoner living in an underground compound beneath Philadelphia in 2035. His friend Jose informs him that he is picked to go outside today and gather the samples of living beings. The staff prepares James, and then he ventures to the abandoned Philadelphia. The animals roam free, and they live without human threat. To find out why these animals are immune, James collects a few animals to bring to scientists for study. James returns after accomplishing his task, and that impresses the group of scientists that are working on finding the cure. They ask him to go back in time and find the source of the virus to help scientists develop a cure in exchange for a reduced sentence. Then we go back to 1990. Catherine Rayleigh, a psychiatrist, gets a message from a mental hospital that says they found an insane man on the streets. She immediately goes to diagnose the man, who turns out to be no one other than James. James asks Catherine what year it is, and she says 1990. Then, James starts mumbling that they sent him to the wrong year. James is then taken to the psychiatric ward, where he meets Jeffrey Goins, a mental patient with environmentalist and anti-corporate views. Then, a panel of doctors interviews James, and he tries to explain that the virus outbreak has already happened. He tells them everything about the 12 monkeys, and how everything began in 1996. But, of course, they don't trust him. James asks for a phone call to send a message by the scientist's instructions. The doctors refuse, but Catherine manages to convince them to let James send a message. James calls the number. But instead of a voicemail, a woman answers, meaning that his message won't be discovered in the future. That night, James has the same dream as at the beginning of the movie. The next day, James and Goins watch a show about vivisection. James comments on how cruel humans are, and that the deadly virus is a deserved thing. After that little talk, Goins creates a distraction and gives a key to James, who uses it to escape the room. He manages to get past by few guards, but he is soon captured. Catherine goes to check on him but discovers that he has vanished. James wakes up in 2035. The scientists interrogate him and play a distorted voicemail message from 1996 that asserts the association of the Army of the 12 Monkeys with the virus. James tells them that they've sent him to 1990 by mistake and that he didn't send that message. They then show him photos of numerous people suspected of being involved with the army, and on one of them, James sees Goins. The scientist decides to send James back in time once again. However, they mess up again, and this time round James ends up on a fierce World War battlefield on the Western Front. He gets shot in a trench where French soldiers are, and then he sees wounded Jose, who is also sent back in time. Then, we cut to the year 1996. Catherine holds a lecture about Cassandra's complex, which relates to a person whose valid warnings or concerns are disbelieved by others. She talks about the case where an unknown person showed up in a World War I trench, and talked about a deadly virus that will erase billions of people. Catherine shows the evidence pictures to the audience, and we see wounded Jose. At the post-lecture book signing, Catherine meets Dr. Peters, who tells her that the apocalypse alarmists represent the sane vision while humanity's gradual destruction of the environment is the real lunacy. However, Catherine is overwhelmed by the great number of people, so she doesn't pay too much attention to the doctor's words. After that, Catherine heads to her car, but James pops out and orders her to get into the car. Then, he tells her to drive to Philadelphia because 12 monkeys are located there. They soon make a break and go to the hotel, and that night James has the same dream as before, and now he recognizes the running woman. It's Catherine, but with blonde hair. In the morning, Catherine wakes up tired, and James tells her about his dream. She replies that it doesn't have an important meaning and that he dreamt about her because of recent events. Then, they see on TV that the police are looking for James and that someone reported Catherine's disappearance. Two of them continue their way to Philadelphia. Catherine notices James' notebook and asks him what he has in there. He explains that he keeps the information about the 12 monkeys and the virus in there. Catherine asks him if he plans to stop them, but James tells her that he can't. His goal is to find their location so the scientist can travel back in time and use the source of the virus to create the cure. Then, on the radio, they hear the news about the boy that disappeared. James tells Catherine that the boy is hiding in the barn and that the whole thing is a hoax. The two of them arrive in Philadelphia, and James notices graffiti of the 12 monkeys insignia. He gets out of the car and starts talking about how they are here, and that they need to follow the graffiti. At the same moment, Catherine debates in her head about escaping, but she decides not to. She joins James and he leads her to an old abandoned building, thinking that the headquarters are there. A homeless man appears and tells James that someone is observing his every move and that he can't escape. He adds that the tracking device is in James's tooth, and that same device was in his, but he removed it. James and Catherine enter the building and find out that James made a mistake, and that they are in the wrong place. Two homeless thugs attack them, and one of them tries to sexually assault Catherine. However, James saves her and kills both thugs with his bare hands. They manage to escape. James sees a building with pig statue and remembers that the scientist showed him that image, and that it is related to the 12 monkeys. He goes in there and starts interrogating the staff. They tell him that Goins is the founder of the army of the 12 monkeys. James and Catherine head to the Goins home, but Catherine notices that James' wound is not looking good. They make a quick break and Catherine removes the bullet. That night, James confronts Goins, who denies any involvement with the group. Instead, he says that, in 1990, James originated the idea of wiping out humanity with a virus stolen from Goins' virologist father, Dr. Leland Goins. James attacks Goins and accuses him that he just wants to confuse him, and Goins orders his men to capture James. He meets with Catherine, who tells him to surrender. Suddenly, James goes back to 2035. Scientists are pleased with James' doings, and they tell him that he is now a free man. However, he wants to go back, because he wants to live in a world where the air is clear and where he can be outside. He convinces the scientist to send him back once again to find out more. They decide to send him back, without knowing that James wants to stay in that world. Catherine is still puzzled by James. She starts thinking that he was telling the truth. Suddenly, on TV, she sees the news and finds out that the missing boy was indeed hiding in the barn like James told her. Then, she gets a call from the detective, who examined the bullet that was in James. He tells her that the bullet is from World War I. Catherine quickly grabs her book and sees James in the picture with Jose in the World War I trench. Catherine goes to the 12 monkeys base, but she doesn't find them, since they act like they are not there. Then, she meets with James once again, but this time he claims that he made everything up because he would rather live in this world like a lunatic, and not in the future like a rat. Catherine takes him to a remote hotel to talk with him, but as they leave the reception, the hotel owner calls someone and tells them that he got the perfect girl for a job. In the room, James admits to Catherine that he was just acting and that he wants to stay in this world, and Catherine assures him that two of them will prevent the outbreak. Suddenly, a man gets into the room and attacks Catherine, but James saves her and then beats the hell out of him. Then, James removes his tooth so the scientist from the future can't track him. The two of them go to a movie theater, where she puts a mustache on him. James falls asleep and after he wakes up, we see that he now has a wig. He goes to look for Catherine and finds her with a blonde wig on her head, just like in his dream. Then the two of them have a romantic moment. Sun rises, and the couple gets into the cab and heads to the airport to escape somewhere far away. On the radio, they hear that the so-called army of the 12 monkeys is not a source of the epidemic, because they are just an environmentalist group who in an act of protest released the animals from a zoo last night and placed Goins' father in an animal cage. James and Catherine assume that James changed something and that there won't be any pandemic. At the airport, Catherine buys plane tickets while James leaves a message telling the scientists that following the army of the 12 monkeys is the wrong track and he will not return. James is confronted by Jose, who gives him a handgun, and that those are the orders. James takes the gun, unsure what to do with it. Catherine then spots Dr. Peters at the airport and recognizes him from a newspaper as an assistant of Goines' father. Peters is about to embark on a tour of several cities that match the locations of the viral outbreak while carrying the virus in the bag. Catherine tells James that Peter will cause the outbreak, and she leads James to him. James sees him and forces his way through a security checkpoint. He pulls out his gun, ready to shoot Peter, but the police shoot James. Catherine runs to James and takes him into her arms. She begins to scan the crowd around her, and sees a small boy from James' dreams, who is James himself witnessing the scene of his own death, which will replay in his dreams for years to come. Peter boards the plane with the virus. He sits down next to one of the scientists from the future, who comments that her job is insurance. The movie ends as young James watches the plane take off from the ground outside the airport. That is it for today's recap. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button and check out the other videos from our channel.